The vast, unforgiving expanse of deep space stretched out before the battered Etherian scout ship as it drifted aimlessly, its once gleaming hull now scared and pitted from battles long past. Inside the cramped confines of the cockpit, pilot Renthera gripped the controls with weary determination, her four eyes scanning the endless void for any sign of refuge. It had been cycles, Etherian cycles, which were roughly equivalent to Earth years, since the Etherians had been driven from their homeworld, their once proud civilization reduced to a scattered fleet of refugee ships. The memories of that fateful day still haunted Renthera, the images of their cities burning, their people fleeing in terror as the invading Krolthari forces swept across the planet. Any sign of a habitable world, Renthera? A gruff voice rumbled from behind her. Renthera turned to see Ambassador Thorin, the Eutherians' envoy and de facto leader, looming over her shoulder. His imposing form, nearly 2 meters tall with a barrel-chested build, was a testament to the physical resilience of their species. Renthera shook her head solemnly. "Nothing, Ambassador. Just more empty space as far as the scanners can detect. We're running low on supplies and our engines are barely holding together. If we don't find a suitable planet soon, I fear our people may not survive much longer." Thorin let out a heavy sigh, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of frustration. "Then we have no choice but to push on. The Krolthari will not rest until they have exterminated the last of us. We must find a new home, even if it means risking everything." Renthera nodded grimly, her four-fingered hands adjusting the ship's course as she guided the battered vessel deeper into the unknown. The Eutherian fleet, a ragtag collection of ships of all shapes and sizes, followed close behind, their occupants huddled together in the cold, cramped confines, their once vibrant culture reduced to a mere shadow of its former self. As the hours ticked by, Renthera's eyes began to grow heavy, the strain of piloting the ship for countless cycles taking its toll. Just as she was about to suggest they find a suitable asteroid field to rest in, a faint blip appeared on the scanner, growing steadily brighter. "Ambassador, I'm detecting a planet. Its composition and atmospheric readings suggest it may be capable of supporting Etherian life." Thorin's eyes widened, a spark of hope igniting within him. "Then set a course, pilot. We must investigate this world immediately." With renewed vigor, Renthera guided the scout ship towards the distant planet, its blue and green hues slowly resolving into a vibrant, living world. As they drew closer, the scale of the planet became apparent. It was vast, nearly twice the size of the Etherian homeworld, with sprawling landmasses and vast, rolling oceans. "This planet, it's incredible," Renthera breathed, her voice tinged with awe. "The resources it could provide, the potential for our people to thrive." Thorin nodded, his mandibles clicking together in a rare gesture of excitement. "Yes, this could be the sanctuary we've been searching for. But we must proceed with caution. We know nothing of the native inhabitants, or whether they will welcome us with open arms." Renthera's hands danced across the ship's controls, guiding the scout vessel into a stable orbit around the planet. "I'll dispatch a small team to conduct a preliminary survey of the surface. If the conditions are suitable, we'll relay the coordinates back to the fleet and begin our approach." Thorin placed a reassuring hand on Renthera's shoulder. "You have done well, my friend. The future of our people rests on your shoulders. Proceed with all due haste, but be mindful of any potential threats. We cannot afford to lose this opportunity." With a nod, Renthera quickly assembled a team of seasoned Etherian explorers, equipping them with the latest in survey equipment and defensive technologies. As the small shuttlecraft descended towards the planet's surface, the Eutherians peered out the viewports, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and trepidation. What would they find on this strange, alien world? Would the native inhabitants be receptive to their presence, or would they view the Eutherians as a threat to be eliminated? The fate of their entire race hung in the balance as the shuttle disappeared beneath the swirling clouds, vanishing from the sight of the anxious Eutherians in orbit. The small Etherian shuttlecraft descended through the wispy cloud cover, its occupants peering out the viewports with a mixture of apprehension and wonder. The planet below them was a vibrant tapestry of blue oceans, verdant landmasses, and swirling white clouds, a stark contrast to the desolate, arid homeworld they had been forced to abandon. Begin atmospheric scans and prepare for landing. Renthra, who was piloting the shuttle, instructed her crew. We need to determine if this world can indeed support Eutherian life before we commit the rest of the fleet. The shuttle's sensors swept across the surface, analyzing the composition of the atmosphere, the temperature ranges, and the presence of any potentially hazardous life forms. To the relief of the Eutherians, the readouts were largely positive. The planet's conditions were well within the parameters required to sustain their species. Optimal oxygen-nitrogen ratio, moderate temperatures, and no obvious signs of large predatory creatures. This world appears to be suitable for habitation, one of the scientists reported, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of cautious optimism. Renthra nodded, guiding the shuttle down towards a large, grassy expanse that seemed relatively flat and free of obstacles. Then let us make our first tentative contact with the native inhabitants. If they are receptive, we may have found the sanctuary our people so desperately need. As the shuttle touched down, the Eutherian explorers disembarked, their four-eyed gazes scanning the unfamiliar landscape. The air was cool and crisp, with a gentle breeze rustling the strange, alien vegetation. In the distance, they could see towering structures, cities, perhaps, or some form of advanced settlements. Fan out and begin your observations, Thorin, who had accompanied the survey team, commanded. Avoid directly engaging the natives unless absolutely necessary. Our priority is to determine if this world can support us, not to provoke a confrontation. The Eutherians spread out, some collecting soil and plant samples, others monitoring the environment for any changes or anomalies. Renthra and a small security detail remained near the shuttle, vigilantly watching for any sign of the native inhabitants. It was not long before their caution was rewarded. In the distance, a group of figures emerged from between the clusters of tall, slender trees, humanoid in appearance, with 2 arms and legs and a single head atop their torsos. Renthra tensed, her 4-fingered hands gripping the handle of her plasma rifle, but Thorin raised a calming hand. Hold your fire. Let us see if we can make peaceful contact. Slowly, the Eutherian ambassador approached the group of humans, his imposing form towering over them. The humans, for their part, seemed both curious and wary, their eyes widening as they took in the sight of the alien visitor. Thorin raised one of his 4-fingered hands in a gesture of greeting, and to his surprise, the humans mimicked the action, their own 2-fingered hands rising to meet his. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the Eutherian explorers. Could it be that these beings were capable of understanding their intentions? Greetings, inhabitants of this world. Thorin rumbled in the Eutherian tongue, his deep voice resonating through the air. I am Thorin, ambassador of the Eutherian people. We have come seeking a new home, for our home has been taken from us by force. The humans looked at one another, their expressions conveying a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Then, to the Eutherians' amazement, one of the humans stepped forward, raising a hand in a gesture that seemed to indicate he wished to communicate. I am Dr. Michael Everett, of the United States of America, the human said in a clear, measured tone. We have never encountered intelligent life from beyond our planet before. This is an unexpected development. Thorin's mandibles clicked together in what might have been interpreted as a smile. Then you are the dominant sentient species of this world. We have come to you in the hopes of finding a new home. For our people face extinction if we cannot secure a suitable refuge. Dr. Everett's brow furrowed, his eyes narrowing as he considered the Eutherian's words. A new home, you say? I'm afraid I will need to consult with our global leaders before we can make any decisions regarding your request. This is a matter of great importance and complexity. Sensing the human's hesitation, Thorin pressed on. Time is of the essence, Dr. Everett. Our resources are dwindling, and the forces that drove us from our homeworld will not rest until they have destroyed the last of us. We come to you in peace, but we are weak and vulnerable. We need your help to ensure the survival of our species." The human scientist regarded the Eutherian ambassador with a pensive expression, his mind no doubt racing to comprehend the implications of this first contact. After a long moment, he nodded slowly. "Very well, Thorin. I will convey your request to our world leaders. But I must caution you. The decision to welcome your people to our planet will not be an easy one. We have much to discuss and many considerations to weigh." Thorin bowed his head, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of gratitude. "We understand, Dr. Everett. We will await your decision and pray that you will see fit to offer us the sanctuary we so desperately need." As the Eutherian ambassador turned to relay the results of the first contact to his waiting crew, a sense of unease settled over the human scientist. What would the arrival of these alien refugees mean for the fragile peace and stability of his world? In the days that followed the initial contact between the Eutherians and the human representatives, tension and uncertainty hung thick in the air. Dr. Michael Everett had dutifully conveyed Thorin's desperate plea for help to the world's governing bodies, but the response had been a chorus of skepticism and apprehension. "Alien refugees? Absolutely not," thundered the Russian president during an emergency UN Security Council meeting. "We cannot risk compromising the security and stability of our world by welcoming these Eutherians into our midst." Other leaders echoed similar sentiments, voicing concerns about the potential threats the Eutherians might pose, both technological and cultural. The prospect of an entire alien civilization taking root on Earth was simply too much for many to stomach. Yet, as the debates raged on, Dr. Everett found himself increasingly drawn to the plight of the Eutherians. During his initial encounter with Thorin, he had sensed a genuine desperation and vulnerability in the alien ambassador that had resonated with him. These were not aggressive conquerors, but a people facing the very real prospect of extinction. "We cannot simply turn our backs on them," Everett argued passionately during a private meeting with the U.S. president. "The Eutherians may be the first intelligent extraterrestrial species we have ever encountered. Imagine the cultural and scientific knowledge we could gain by welcoming them to our world." The president frowned, her brow furrowed in deep contemplation. "I understand your perspective, Dr. Everett, but the risks are simply too great. What if their presence on Earth destabilizes our geopolitical landscape? What if their advanced technologies fall into the wrong hands? We cannot afford to jeopardize the safety and security of our citizens." Everett leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Then we must find a way to mitigate those risks. Impose strict controls, limit their access to sensitive information, monitor their activities, whatever it takes to ensure their presence does not pose a threat. But we cannot condemn them to extinction simply out of fear." The president considered his words, her expression softening slightly. "You make a compelling argument, Doctor. Very well, I will propose a conditional welcome for the Eutherians to the Security Council. But the terms must be ironclad, and they must be willing to comply without question." Everett nodded, a glimmer of hope kindling within him. "I will convey your proposal to Thorin immediately. I believe he and his people will be receptive. They are in no position to refuse any offer of sanctuary." The scientist wasted no time in returning to the Eutherian encampment, where Thorin and his people had been anxiously awaiting news. As Everett relayed the details of the conditional offer, the Eutherian ambassador's mandibles clicked together in a gesture of cautious optimism. "We understand your people's concerns, Dr. Everett," Thorin rumbled, his deep voice tinged with a hint of resignation. "The Eutherians have learned the hard way that unchecked power and ambition can lead to ruin. We will agree to whatever terms your leaders deem necessary, so long as it means the survival of our race." Everett nodded, relieved to see the Eutherians' willingness to compromise. "Then I will convey your acceptance to the Security Council. However, I must warn you, the terms they propose may be quite stringent. You and your people must be prepared to make significant concessions. Thorin inclined his head, his 4 eyes narrowing with determination. We have lost everything, Dr. Everett. Our homeworld, our civilization, our way of life. We have no choice but to accept whatever conditions your leaders impose, for the alternative is the complete annihilation of our species. In the days that followed, the world's leaders hammered out the details of the Eutherian settlement plan, with Dr. Everett serving as the primary liaison between the two parties. It was a delicate and often contentious negotiation, with each side seeking to secure the most advantageous terms. Ultimately, the Eutherians agreed to a strict set of conditions. Their technology would be closely monitored and regulated, their movements would be restricted to designated areas, and they would be required to submit to regular security screenings. In exchange, they would be granted temporary refuge on Earth, with the possibility of eventually being granted full citizenship. As Thorin and his people disembarked from their ships and set foot on the unfamiliar soil of their new home, a somber hush fell over the Eutherian refugees. This was not the triumphant homecoming they had once envisioned, but rather a fragile and uncertain alliance born of desperation and fear. Yet, even in the face of such daunting challenges, a glimmer of hope flickered in the Eutherians' eyes. For the first time in cycles, they had the chance to rebuild, to reclaim the promise of a future that had been so cruelly snatched from them. And with the uneasy support of their human hosts, perhaps the Eutherians could yet find a way to thrive in this strange foreign land. As the Eutherian refugees settled into their designated areas on the outskirts of major human cities, an uneasy peace settled over the fragile alliance between the two civilizations. Under the watchful eye of UN-appointed monitors, the Eutherians began the slow process of integrating into human society, cautiously exploring their new surroundings and tentatively reaching out to their hosts. Dr. Michael Everett, who had advocated so passionately for the Eutherians' acceptance, found himself torn between his desire to help the alien refugees and his growing sense of unease. While the Eutherians appeared to be cooperating fully with the imposed restrictions, there were whispers, rumors of secret activities, of clandestine experiments, of technological capabilities that far outstripped anything humanity had ever seen. Determined to uncover the truth, Everett assembled a team of trusted scientists and investigators, tasking them with a thorough, covert investigation of the Eutherian encampments. They scoured the areas, analyzing every scrap of technology, every piece of data, and every interaction between the Eutherians and their human overseers. At first, the findings were innocuous. The Eutherians seemed to be using only the most basic of technologies, carefully adhering to the terms of their settlement. But as the investigation progressed, the team began to uncover disturbing anomalies. These energy readings are unprecedented, one of the scientists reported, her brow furrowed in concern. The power output of some of their equipment is orders of magnitude beyond anything we've seen, even in our most classified military projects. Everett's frown deepened as he studied the data. And what about their communications? Have we been able to decipher any of their transmissions? Another member of the team stepped forward, his expression grave. We've managed to crack some of their encryption protocols, and the content of their messages is troubling. They appear to be communicating with other Eutherian ships that are still in orbit, coordinating some kind of covert operations. Everett's heart sank. Covert operations. What precisely are they planning? We're not sure, the scientist admitted, but the language they use suggests they're laying the groundwork for some sort of contingency plan, something they intend to carry out if their settlement here on Earth fails. The implications were staggering. Had the Eutherians been playing a deceptive game all along, lulling the humans into a false sense of security, while secretly plotting their own agenda? Everett's mind raced with the possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Everett redoubled the investigation, ordering his team to dig deeper into the Eutherians' activities. They scoured every inch of the refugee encampments, searching for any evidence of hidden technologies or subversive plans. And then, Just when Everett was beginning to lose hope, they made a startling discovery. "Doctor, you need to see this," one of the investigators called out, her voice tinged with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Everett hurried to her location, his heart pounding in his chest. What he found there defied all logic and reason. A sleek, futuristic craft, its hull seamlessly blended with the surrounding landscape, hidden from casual observation, and nestled within its interior, a cache of advanced technologies that dwarfed anything humanity had ever produced. This is not just a refugee ship," Everett murmured, his eyes wide with a mixture of fascination and fear. "This is a fully capable warship, with capabilities that far surpass our own." The implications were staggering. If the Eutherians possessed such advanced military technology, what other secrets were they hiding? And what did their presence on Earth mean for the delicate balance of power that had prevailed for so long? Everett knew he had to act quickly. Gathering his team, he ordered them to maintain the strictest secrecy, even from the UN monitors who oversaw the Eutherian settlement. They would need to tread carefully, for revealing this discovery too soon could shatter the fragile alliance and plunge the world into chaos. As the days passed, Everett found himself increasingly troubled by the weight of the information he now possessed. The Eutherians had come to Earth seeking refuge, but what if their true motives were far more sinister? What if they were simply waiting for the right moment to unleash their devastating technological might upon an unsuspecting humanity? The scientists' once unwavering belief in the Eutherians' peaceful intentions began to crumble, replaced by a growing sense of dread and uncertainty. He knew that he would have to confront Thorin and the Eutherian leadership to demand answers and uncover the full extent of their deception. But even as he steeled himself for the confrontation, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of his mind. What if the Eutherians were truly the victims, as they had claimed? What if the advanced technology they possessed was simply a means of survival, a desperate measure to ensure the continuation of their species? The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and Everett knew that the decisions he made in the days to come would have far-reaching consequences. With a heavy heart, he prepared to confront the Eutherians, his mind racing with questions and scenarios, all leading to an uncertain and potentially explosive conclusion. The tension in the air was palpable as Dr. Michael Everett strode into the Eutherian encampment, his expression grim and resolute. Thorin, the Eutherian ambassador, greeted him with a cautious nod, his 4 eyes scanning the scientist's face for any hint of what was to come. "Dr. Everett," Thorin rumbled, his deep voice tinged with a subtle edge of apprehension. "To what do we owe the honor of your unexpected visit?" Everett took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation that was to come. "Thorin, I'm afraid I have some disturbing news to share with you and your people. News that calls into question the very foundation of our alliance." The Eutherian ambassador's mandibles clicked together, a gesture that Everett had come to recognize as a sign of unease. "Speak plainly, Dr. Everett. What have you discovered?" Everett squared his shoulders, his gaze unwavering. "We have uncovered evidence of a hidden Eutherian warship located within your encampment, a vessel equipped with technologies far beyond anything humanity has ever developed." A hush fell over the Eutherian gathering, the refugees exchanging uneasy glances. Thorin's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening. "I see. And what conclusions have you drawn from this discovery?" "The conclusion is inescapable, Thorin," Everett replied, his voice laced with a note of accusation. "You and your people have been deceiving us all along. You are not the helpless refugees you claim to be, but a highly advanced civilization with the capability to wage war against us." Thorin's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a clear sign of his agitation. "Dr. Everett, I assure you that we have been nothing but truthful in our dealings with your people. The warship you discovered is a remnant of our past, a relic of the conflict that drove us from our homeworld." Everett shook his head, his brow furrowed in skepticism. "That hardly seems plausible, Thorin. A mere relic does not possess the kind of advanced weaponry and propulsion systems we have uncovered." "No, This suggests a deliberate attempt to conceal your true nature and intentions. The Eutherian ambassador's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger flickering across his features. You presume to know the full extent of our history and our struggles, Dr. Everett, but the truth is far more complex than you can possibly imagine. Thorin turned to address the gathered Etherians, his voice booming with a newfound authority. My people, the time has come to reveal the painful truth of our past. We can no longer hide from the sins that have haunted us for cycles. The Eutherians shifted uncomfortably, their expressions a mix of trepidation and resignation. Thorin took a deep breath and continued, his voice heavy with a lifetime of regret. It is true that we were not the victims of an imperialist war, as we had claimed. The Krulthuri were not our conquerors, but our victims. We, the Eutherians, were the aggressors in a brutal campaign of subjugation and extermination. Everett felt his stomach churn, the revelation striking him like a physical blow. You mean to say that you were the ones responsible for the destruction of your own homeworld? Thorin nodded, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of shame. Yes, Dr. Everett. Our ambition and our lust for power led us to wage a campaign of conquest against our neighboring civilizations. We sought to expand our influence, to assert our technological and military superiority. The Eutherian ambassador paused, his eyes downcast. But in the end, our hubris was our undoing. The Krulthuri, once a peaceful people, rose up against us with a ferocity we had not anticipated. They fought back with a determination born of desperation, and in the end, they succeeded in driving us from our homeworld. Everett felt a wave of nausea wash over him, the implications of Thorin's confession threatening to overwhelm him. Then everything you've told us, about seeking refuge, about needing our help, was a lie. You came to our world not as refugees, but as conquerors in waiting. Thorin's eyes flashed with a sudden intensity, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of defiance. Not a lie, Dr. Everett. The truth. We are indeed refugees, forced to flee the consequences of our own actions. Our people face extinction, and we came to you in the hopes of finding a new home, a chance to atone for the sins of our past. The Eutherian ambassador took a step forward, his imposing form looming over the human scientist. But make no mistake, Dr. Everett. If you choose to turn your back on us, to deny us the sanctuary we so desperately need, then we will be forced to take drastic measures to ensure our survival. The fate of our species rests in your hands. Everett felt a chill run down his spine, the weight of Thorin's words pressing down on him like a physical force. The fragile alliance that had been forged between the Eutherians and humanity now hung by a thread, its future uncertain and perilous. As the Eutherian ambassador retreated, leaving Everett alone with his thoughts, the scientist knew that the decisions he made in the days to come would have far-reaching consequences, not just for his own world, but for the fate of two civilizations. The news of the Eutherians' past atrocities spread like wildfire through the human settlements, igniting a firestorm of outrage and fear. Protesters flooded the streets, calling for the immediate expulsion of the alien refugees, while world leaders convened emergency meetings to determine the appropriate course of action. In the midst of the chaos, the Eutherian encampment descended into a state of civil war, as the refugees themselves grappled with the devastating revelations about their people's past. Factions quickly emerged, some led by Thorin and his loyalists, who still clung to the hope of finding sanctuary on Earth, and others who believed that the Eutherians should be held accountable for their crimes. Dr. Michael Everett watched the unfolding events with a heavy heart, his own doubts and convictions torn asunder by the weight of the Eutherians' confession. He had advocated so passionately for the aliens' acceptance, only to find that his trust had been betrayed. Now he found himself caught in the crossfire, desperately trying to maintain order and prevent the conflict from spilling over into the wider human population. This is a disaster, Dr. Everett, the U.S. President said, her brow furrowed with a mixture of anger and concern. We cannot allow this civil war to destabilize our world. The Eutherians must be brought under control, or we may be forced to take drastic measures." Everett nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "I understand your concerns, Madam President, but we must tread carefully here. The Eutherians are a highly advanced civilization, and their technological capabilities pose a genuine threat. Any heavy-handed response could provoke a violent retaliation." The President's eyes narrowed. "Then what do you propose, Doctor? We cannot simply stand by and allow these alien refugees to tear our world apart." Everett took a deep breath, his gaze resolute. "I will go to the Eutherian encampment, and I will try to broker a ceasefire between the warring factions. Perhaps there is still a way to salvage this alliance, to find a path forward that ensures the safety of both our peoples." The President hesitated, her expression skeptical. "You're placing a great deal of trust in these Eutherians, Doctor. After all, they have already deceived us once. What's to stop them from turning on you?" Everett's jaw tightened. "I understand your concerns, Madam President, but I believe that there may still be a chance to reach a peaceful resolution if we can just get the Eutherians to see reason. Their very survival is at stake here, and they may be willing to make concessions if it means the continuation of their species." The President sighed, resignation evident in her features. "Very well, Dr. Everett, but I'm putting you on a very short leash. If this ceasefire attempt fails, or if the Eutherians show any signs of aggression, I will have no choice but to order a full-scale military intervention." Everett nodded, his expression grim. "I understand, Madam President. I will do everything in my power to prevent this situation from spiraling out of control." With that, Everett made his way to the Eutherian encampment, his heart pounding in his chest. As he approached the hastily erected barricades, he could hear the sounds of gunfire and the cries of the wounded, the once peaceful settlement now a chaotic battleground. Thorin, his mandibles stained with the blood of his fellow Eutherians, spotted Everett and rushed to meet him, his eyes wild with desperation. "Dr. Everett, you must help us, please," the Eutherian ambassador pleaded. "Our people are tearing each other apart, and the fragile alliance with your kind hangs by a thread." Everett raised his hands, his expression calm and resolute. "I'm here to try and broker a ceasefire, Thorin, but you must listen to me, and you must convince your people to lay down their arms." Thorin's eyes narrowed, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of mistrust. "Why should we trust you, human? After all, it was your kind who exposed our deception and shattered the fragile trust we had built." Everett took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. "Because, Thorin, the alternative is the complete and utter annihilation of your people. Your civil war has already drawn the attention of the world's militaries, and they are poised to intervene with overwhelming force." The Eutherian ambassador's eyes widened in horror, the realization of their perilous situation dawning on him. Then you must help us. Dr. Everett, we cannot afford to lose any more of our people. Somehow, we must find a way to end this conflict before it's too late." Nodding, Everett moved to address the gathered Eutherians, his voice ringing out with a sense of authority that belied his human form. "My friends, you must listen to me. The time for infighting and recrimination has passed. The very survival of your species hangs in the balance, and only by standing united can you hope to secure the sanctuary you so desperately need." The Eutherians fell silent, their weapons lowered as they listened to Everett's impassioned plea. Thorin stepped forward, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of resignation. "The human speaks the truth, my people. We must put aside our differences and focus on the task at hand, to convince your leaders to welcome us, and to prove that we are worthy of the sanctuary they have offered." As the Eutherians slowly began to lower their weapons, Everett breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that the fragile alliance had been saved, at least for the moment. But even as the ceasefire took hold, a sense of foreboding lingered in the air, for the true test of their unity was yet to come. In the aftermath of the Eutherian civil war, the fragile alliance between the alien refugees and the human governments hung by a thread. Thorin and his people had acceded to Dr. Everett's pleas for a ceasefire, but the underlying tensions and mistrust remained palpable. Everett found himself caught in the middle, shuttling between the Eutherian encampment and the halls of power, desperately trying to find a way to preserve the tenuous partnership. But as the days turned into weeks, it became increasingly clear that the world's leaders had lost patience with the Eutherians and their deceptions. "Enough is enough, Dr. Everett," the Russian president growled during an emergency UN Security Council meeting. "These aliens have shown their true colors. They are not refugees, but conquerors in waiting. We cannot allow them to remain on our world, let alone grant them the sanctuary they seek." Everett straightened his shoulders, his gaze unwavering. "Mr. President, I understand your concerns, but I implore you to reconsider. The Eutherians may have committed grievous sins in the past, but they are now a people facing extinction. Expelling them would be a death sentence." The Chinese representative leaned forward, her expression stern. "And what of the security risks, Dr. Everett? We have uncovered evidence of their advanced military capabilities that could pose a grave threat to our world. Can we truly afford to take that chance?" Everett took a deep breath, his mind racing. "Then we must find a way to mitigate those risks, to impose strict controls and oversight that will ensure the Eutherians pose no danger to our world. But to cast them out entirely would be a betrayal of our own values, a rejection of the very principles of compassion and cooperation that bind our nations together." The room fell silent, the faces of the world leaders reflecting a mixture of skepticism and resignation. Finally, the U.S. president rose to her feet, her expression grave. "Dr. Everett, we have deliberated long and hard on this matter, and we have reached a decision." Everett felt his heart sink, bracing himself for the worst. "The Eutherians will be allowed to remain on Earth, but only under the strictest of conditions. Their technology will be closely monitored and regulated, their movements will be restricted to designated areas, and they will be subject to regular security screenings. Any deviation from these terms, any sign of deception or aggression, and they will be summarily expelled from our world. Is that understood?" Everett felt a wave of relief wash over him, even as he recognized the gravity of the situation. "Madam President, I will convey your ultimatum to Thorin and the Eutherian leadership. I can assure you that they will accept these terms, for they have no other choice." As Everett made his way back to the Eutherian encampment, he could feel the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and he knew that the decisions he had made, and the ones he was about to deliver, would have far-reaching consequences. Thorin greeted him with a mix of trepidation and resignation, his 4 eyes scanning the human's face for any sign of hope. "Dr. Everett, your presence here can only mean one thing. The human leaders have reached a decision regarding our fate." Everett nodded solemnly. "Yes, Thorin, they have. And I'm afraid the terms they are proposing are quite stringent." The Eutherian ambassador's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a clear sign of his unease. "Speak plainly, Dr. Everett. What do they demand of us?" Everett took a deep breath, steeling himself for Thorin's reaction. "Your people will be allowed to remain on Earth, but only under the strictest of conditions. Your technology will be closely monitored and regulated. Your movements will be restricted to designated areas, and you will be subject to regular security screenings. Any deviation from these terms, any sign of deception or aggression, and you will be summarily expelled from our world." Thorin's eyes narrowed, his expression a mix of anger and resignation. "And if we refuse these terms?" Everett's gaze hardened. "Then you and your people will be forced to leave Earth, Thorin. The human leaders have made it clear. They will not tolerate any further deception or potential threats to their world." The Eutherian ambassador stood silently for a long moment, his mandibles clicking together as he contemplated the ultimatum. Finally, he inclined his head, a gesture of acquiescence. "We have no choice, Dr. Everett. The survival of our species depends on us accepting these conditions, no matter how distasteful they may be. We will comply with the human demands, and we will work tirelessly to prove our worth as allies and worthy residents of this world." Everett felt a wave of relief wash over him, but the triumph was tinged with a sense of unease. The Eutherians had agreed to the terms, but at what cost to their pride and their autonomy? And what would the future hold for this fragile alliance, built on the foundation of mistrust and concession? As he turned to leave, Everett couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and he knew that the true test was yet to come. In the weeks that followed the imposition of the human leader's ultimatum, an uneasy calm settled over the Eutherian encampments. Thorin and his people, their pride battered but their determination unbroken, begrudgingly complied with the strict conditions placed upon them. Under the watchful gaze of UN-appointed monitors, the Eutherians submitted to thorough security screenings, surrendered their most advanced technologies for inspection, and restricted their movements to designated areas. It was a humbling experience for a civilization that had once prided itself on its technological superiority and uncompromising strength. Yet, despite the indignity of their circumstances, Thorin could not help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. The fact that the humans had not simply expelled them outright was a testament to the persuasive powers of Dr. Everett, whose tireless advocacy had, on more than one occasion, saved the fragile alliance from collapsing entirely. "We owe much to you, Dr. Everett," Thorin rumbled, his mandibles clicking together in a gesture of respect. "Without your intervention, our people would surely have been cast out to face certain doom." Everett offered the Eutherian ambassador a weary smile. "I simply did what I believed was right, Thorin. The survival of your people is paramount, even if the terms of your stay on Earth are less than ideal." Thorin inclined his head, his 4 eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "And yet I sense a lingering unease within you, human. Surely you must harbor doubts about our true intentions, even now." Everett sighed, his expression heavy with the weight of responsibility. "I would be lying if I said I didn't, Thorin. The revelation of your people's past transgressions has shaken my faith, and the trust between our two civilizations remains fragile at best." The Eutherian ambassador's mandibles clicked together in a gesture of understanding. "I cannot blame you for your skepticism, Dr. Everett. We have done much to betray the trust you and your kind have placed in us. But I give you my solemn word that we will do everything in our power to prove our worth as allies and worthy residents of this world." Everett nodded, his expression softening slightly. "I know, Thorin, and I will do my utmost to ensure that your people are given a fair chance to redeem themselves. But you must understand, the human leaders will be watching your every move, waiting for any sign of deception or aggression." Thorin's eyes narrowed, a hint of defiance flickering in their depths. "We are well aware of the consequences, Dr. Everett, and we will gladly bear the burden of your mistrust if it means the survival of our species. For we have learned, through bitter experience, that there is no alternative to compromise and cooperation." The two stood in contemplative silence for a moment, the weight of their shared responsibility hanging heavy in the air. Then Thorin reached out, placing a massive 4-fingered hand on Everett's shoulder in a gesture of friendship. "You have become more than just our advocate, human. You are a bridge between our two worlds, a guardian of the fragile truce that has been forged. I trust that, in the days to come, you will continue to guide us and our human allies towards a future of mutual understanding and respect." Everett felt a surge of emotion, the Eutherian's words resonating within him. "I will do everything in my power to ensure that this alliance endures, Thorin. For the sake of both our peoples, we cannot afford to let it falter." With a final nod, Thorin turned and rejoined his fellow Eutherians, the alien refugees going about their daily routines under the watchful gaze of the human monitors. Everett stood there for a moment, his mind racing with the implications of this fragile truce. As he made his way back to the human settlements, Everett couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led him to this point. From the initial wonder of first contact to the shattering revelations of the Eutherians' past, it had been a roller coaster of emotions and difficult decisions. Yet, despite the challenges, Everett found himself more determined than ever to see this alliance through. For in the Eutherians, he saw not just a people in need of sanctuary, but a civilization with the potential to enrich humanity's own understanding of the universe. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose, Everett set about the task of fostering closer ties between the two worlds, working tirelessly to bridge the gaps of mistrust and cultural differences. It would not be an easy path, he knew, but the rewards, for both civilizations, were too great to ignore. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the fragile truce between the Eutherians and humanity began to take on a more solid foundation. Slowly, the human populace grew more accustomed to the presence of their alien neighbors, their initial fears and suspicions slowly giving way to a cautious curiosity. And through it all, Dr. Michael Everett remained a constant, guiding both sides towards a future where the survival of the Eutherians was not just a necessity, but a shared responsibility. A future where two civilizations, once worlds apart, could stand united in the face of the unknown.